Good afternoon, and it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Sue Lawkowski, and I'm with Erie 1 BOCES. I want to say first, if you have a question or an idea or a thought that you want to express, please jump right in. I would prefer to be interrupted and answer your question on the spot. Don't hold back. If you need, if you have a question, please let us know. The other example of my analness is the fact that the packet you just got is on blue paper. And I asked Leigh to put it on blue paper so that you'd know that this stuff is all about BOCES. And if you want to find something about BOCES, it's the blue paper. Now, isn't that terrible? That's the lengths to which I go to be organized. I thought as I started this presentation that I would try really hard not to bore you to death. But there's some facts that you need to know about how schools work with arts organizations and with artists. And if you don't have that information, as you go forward and you try to make contacts with schools, you're going to say, what the heck is going on now? So hopefully I put together 5 questions that people ask me all the time, and I'm going to try to be pretty brief with them and turn it over to Leigh. Now, behind every administrator is somebody who makes them look good. Her. She's the one that makes sure contracts get taken care of, that all the information is in, and in the end, that you get a check, which is the point of all of this. And I don't have anything to do with that. I go to meetings and I talk to people and everything, and then she's back at the office making things happen. So when I was invited to speak, I said, would you come with me? Because I don't want to speak for you. I'd rather you spoke, and you'll see she's not shy. She'll let you know exactly what's important. So the first question people ask me is, what the heck is a BOCES? And what does it have to do with arts and education? About 60 years ago, when life was much simpler, Buffalo Public Schools were this fabulous, wonderful, gigantic operation, which they still are, right, Michele? But the suburban schools couldn't even begin to meet those needs. They couldn't take care of vocational education. They couldn't take care of special education. They couldn't do any of the extra things that kids needed in schools. So the state decided to have some organizations that did what they called shared services. So let's get everybody together and have a class of welders or cosmetologists or whatever, and let's get the children with disabilities together from the many school districts so that we can group them a little better. And that's where BOCES started, was to serve that population. As the years have gone by, we've grown into lots and lots of different areas, and one of them is arts and education. We are the behind-the-scenes people who try to get schools to put more money into arts and education, to have more programming. We try to make things simple when they hire you. We try to make sure that you get paid. Again, money, you know. So as we move along, we try to get to keep arts and education funded. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. About 5 years ago in Western New York, in our BOCES, the budget was very healthy for arts and education programs. It's now about 1/3 of what it was 5 years ago. None of you got any worse at what you have to offer. Schools have diverted the money to other places. Our issue, Leigh and I, we feel for those children who don't come to school because they're on the basketball team. They come to school because of the cultural opportunities that are available at school, the enrichment that you bring into the classroom. And when those students are not served, then we're not doing our job as educators. So our job is to keep things funded at the best level that they can be, and hopefully things will get better and administrators will understand how important you are to schools. So that's how Erie 1 BOCES fits into all of this. There's 4 BOCES in Western New York, so depending on what school district you're working with, you might be working with us. You might be working, if you're going down into the Cattaraugus-Allegheny region, you might be working with that BOCES. If you're going up into Medina, you might be working with the Orleans-Niagara BOCES. But we all do the same thing. We all are advocates for cultural education, for aesthetic education, and we all work the same way. And the object is to increase programming in Western New York. My second question is, how are K-12 public schools funded in New York State, and how does Erie 1 BOCES fit into the funding process? You probably have heard the word sequestration in Washington, and you hear these things about, like, it's going to affect education. What's it going to do? Well, it's not going to hurt you. But it has several aspects that will affect school district budgets. If districts have Head Start programs, those could get affected. Lots of money for students with disabilities come through the federal government to the state government and down to the school district. Well, if you have a child who needs speech therapy and the child's getting speech therapy 3 times a week, just because fewer dollars come to the school district, it doesn't mean you can go to the parent and say, geez, we're only going to be able to afford 1 time a week for your child next year. So you got to find the money someplace else to keep paying the speech teacher to give the child speech therapy. So there's things that are happening in Washington that are going to affect all schools if the sequestration actually goes through at the end of the week. So if somebody says, are you in favor of that? No, not the education part, you're not. You might have heard about a 2% tax cap in New York State. The governor decided that as a rule, all municipalities and school districts that we're charging too much money. You're paying too much in taxes. And on the one hand, I pay too much in taxes. I get it, I understand. But on the other hand, what those dollars fund is very important. And if costs are increasing for the fuel that goes in school buses, for the food that they use to feed the kids, for all of the expenses, if that's all increasing and you can only get 2% more from your taxpayers and the federal government is giving you less, your overall budget's going to suffer. So that's another reason we'd like to maximize the dollars that districts do set aside for arts and education programming, and hopefully they won't cut them any more than they have to as all this doom and gloom happens. Aren't I cheery today? I'll get to cheery. It is a tough one. It's very, very difficult to look at all of this and be cheery. However, state funding involves suburban and rural school districts, involves different kinds of aid. And I hate to say it's a rebate, but it kind of, I guess this is the best way to explain it. If a school district pays you $1,000 for a program, the school district reports that to New York State. And it increases the amount of state aid the school district gets back the next year. And that's why they go through BOCES, because it increases their state aid in the next year. Buffalo is not a part of BOCES, so I'm talking about suburban and rural school districts, and all of that money hopefully gets funded back, gets put back into the budget, and the programming increases in amount, and then maybe they do a little bit more with their arts and education budget. I'm trying not to bore you, but you know, money is money. Number 3, if I work as a teaching artist in the K-12 public schools, must I be fingerprinted, and why? Well, New York passed a law about 14 years ago called Project Save. Project Save said that anybody who works in a school district and gets paid by the school district and has direct contact with students and works in a school district more than 5 times has to be fingerprinted. So if you work in a school district twice, you don't have to be fingerprinted. But most school districts don't like to play that game because now they got to keep track of you. 3, 4, oh, wait a minute, she can't come back, you can't come back, we got too much. So most school districts would prefer to just fingerprint you or have you fingerprinted. I know it costs $99 and it's a lot of money, but once you're fingerprinted, you don't ever have to do it again. And if you go to another school, you just say, yeah, I'm in the system, I'm fingerprinted, and you don't have to do it again. So it's once for life. I'm going to take a really wild guess and say that nobody here has done anything that would stop you from getting fingerprint clearance. And then going forward, if you get arrested, the school district finds out. And if you got arrested for speeding, not that I would ever get arrested for speeding, but if you got arrested for speeding, they would look and say, oh, speeding, oh, never mind. But if it was something more serious, the school district would know and they would ask questions. Yes, question.
I was told that I keep the wrong right, but I've been doing this for so long that I was grandfathered in to the Buffalo Public Schools.
To the Buffalo Public Schools you are, because you've been doing it for so long. But you have to be grandfathered into each school district.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So you're grandfathered into Buffalo.
And not the other ones.
But not the other ones.
Okay. So
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's not, no, that would be too simple.
Fingerprint registry, it doesn't matter if you move out of state and go to a different state? then you have to be re-fingerprinted.
I don't know what the laws are in the other
Well,
states.
I worked with children in Oregon, and they told me if I moved back to New York State and worked with children again, I would have to be re-fingerprinted.
I
Okay,
think it's a
That's
state
what I
thing.
thought.
okay.
Okay.
I did do a program in Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
and I had to go through the feds in an FBI background check and fingerprinting.
Wow.
Can I use that?
No. No, SED wants their $99. That's really the bottom line. They want their $99. Questions? Okay. Number 4, how does BOCES work with arts partners for learning to help K-12 public schools to increase arts programming? Leigh's going to talk a lot about how this all happens and when you get a school district wants to use one of your programs or wants you to come in as a teaching artist or wants you to do a residency, or we even have purchases of tickets that go through BOCES. If that happens, Leigh's going to tell you what the process is for that, so you're not lost in a paperwork nightmare and have no idea what you're supposed to do or why you're supposed to do that. But our commitment is really philosophical. Our commitment is a belief that what you do is important. Our belief is that a well-rounded education that doesn't include arts programming is not really a well-rounded education. So if we can do anything to get more kids, more exposure, more opportunities, we're going to do that. And when they asked for somebody to sit on this new Arts Council, I said, I'll do it, because I really believe in what you do, and I believe it's a valuable thing for our students, and that you shouldn't be able to pick and choose that the kids in that school district get those opportunities because there's money, and kids in that school district don't get money. And I think Michele will tell you that Buffalo does set aside money for arts and education programming, but a lot of school districts don't. Little school districts, they just put the money somewhere else. They tell you they don't cut the basketball team, though. And I guess as an aside,
Something about basketball.
I said that they don't cut the basketball team. If they do cut the basketball team, there's generally an outcry from parents of students who are on the basketball team. And if they cut the marching band, those parents come. And unfortunately, I think arts and education is such a diverse term that you don't have a group of parents who support it. So if a school district is going to cut back on a residency, say, that you've always had a writer come in and work with the 4th graders or the 3rd graders on writing skills, and they've done that forever, and they decide to cut that out, you might not get a group of parents who come in and lobby for that and call school board members and demand that be put back in. But if you cut the basketball team, their phones are going to ring a lot more than the other. So I think it's our place at Erie One BOCES to be those advocates for children, to be the person that can allow children the opportunities to enrich their education. And number 5, if Erie One BOCES is involved in my contract to perform services for K-12 public schools, when will I get paid? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question that
Yes.
goes back.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. If a school calls us to come in,
Yes,
how do we get them to go through? What's my part?
she'll talk.
Oh, okay.
Right? Right? That's on her list. Yes. Yes, because we want to tell you that if they say, we're working with the BOCES, don't be afraid. And we want to say, if they say, if you want, you can suggest, you can say that. It has nothing, you will get not $1 less. You still get your money. The school district gets their service. It doesn't affect you at all. It's nothing at all. It's just the way the funding goes, and they get a little more state aid, but they've got to make the phone call to us and say, we want you. And then we'll do the paperwork from there, and we'll make sure you get paid. There's a contract that has to be done with each artist. It has to be Board of Education approved. I believe that you're probably all residents of some school district. There are people elected to the Board of Education. They represent you, and they spend your tax dollars. And a school district cannot enter into a contract with anybody, whether it's a company to pave the parking lot or anybody, somebody to supply gasoline fuel for the buses. It doesn't matter. You're just like that. You're somebody who has to get paid. You're a contract that has to be approved by the Board of Education. Once the Board of Education approves it, you go ahead and do the work in the school district. The school district lets Leigh know, sometimes through an email.
You're going into
I'm sorry. I'll stop. And she does what she needs to do to get the check generated. It doesn't take any longer than if our Yanni was sending you a check. We process checks the same way. We do send people a W-2 form or a 1099 or whatever, depending on how we hire you, so it does get reported. And that's the only thing I can say. Maybe a school district might not do that, but I think most of them have been caught by their auditors for letting people slide through the cracks, and everybody tries to do that. So I don't think there's any differences. If the school district says, we're going to work through BOCES, don't be afraid, we'll take care of you. We've been telling districts how they can use those services, what they can do with us, and how we can maximize their dollars. We get good success. The problem is not that you're not doing a good job or that we're not getting you paid. The problem is the pot of money it stays the same or gets smaller for a school district, and their expenses go up and they have to cut somewhere. And unfortunately, the arts seem to be a target, and that's horrible. It's horrible for kids. I know it's horrible for you because you're not working, but it's horrible for children because children should have those opportunities. So it's our job to encourage school districts to put more money into arts programming, to make those opportunities available to students however we can, whenever we can, and to make sure that the process is smooth so that you get your contract, everything gets signed, you do your job, you get paid, and it's pretty seamless.
So I have put all my information in a packet. However, it's not pretty. And this is pretty. So if you want to just watch the presentation and then we can look at the notes together so I don't lose you while you're looking at your paper. And I will tell you that I am a numbers person, organized. I love the arts, I appreciate the arts, but my husband is actually the creative artist one. So I came up with the idea to do a logo that would represent arts and education, and I gave him what I thought, and he did it. So I give him all the credit for this. Okay. So arts and education through BOCES has 3 parts. And I called this artists, Cindy, before I knew that you guys were all really culturals. I was expecting artists. We can talk about that in a minute. And then there's the school part, and then there's my BOCES part. And this is called a swim lane flow chart. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but anything that happens in the green line is the artist's job, and anything that happens in the middle is for the school, and everything that happens over here is my job. Okay? Go ahead. So the first thing that happens is the artist in the school schedule a program, and that doesn't have anything to do with me. That has to do with you and the school. You set up the time, the location, how much it's going to cost, how many kids are going to attend, all the specifics. And then the school submits a blue request form to me. And they already know how to do this. Anybody that has BOCES money allocated in arts and education, they know how to do this. So you don't have to have any part in this. And then they send that to me. And the first thing I do is make sure that there's money there. And again, that doesn't have anything to do, you don't have any control over that. I have a list of how much the districts have put in and how much is available and how much they've already spent. And I just verify that what they're planning to spend on your program is allowed. And then I need to determine what type of contract to create. Button again. So you can see this is green, so this has to do with you. If you have a federal tax ID number, raise your hand. Okay. You would get a purchase order. That does not require board approval like the rest of them that I'm going to talk about in a minute, so you just saved a step. If you have a New York State retirement system number, raise your hand. So you alone would get the IEA. Oh, and down here too, okay. And then if you use your Social Security number as your tax ID number on your work, then you would get an SPC. And I have included a copy of those in the back. We'll do that in a second. Okay, go ahead. So then the next thing that happens is I actually create the contract, and any additional forms that I might need, tax forms or whatever it is, and I send those to you. Go ahead. And this is a one-time thing. So if I send you a tax form and you return it to me, as long as you stay at the same address, I never need that again. If you move, I need a new one, but pretty much I keep this on file. It's a one-time thing. So then you sign anything that I send to you, and this is very important, I need an invoice. I can't pay you if you don't give me an invoice. And there are certain things it has to have, and if they don't have them, then I'm going to call you and I'm going to make you send me another one. It has to be billed to Erie 1 BOCES. We are paying you, it has to be billed to us. The program information on your contract needs to match the information on your invoice. So if you're working at this school, then your invoice needs to say you're working at this school. If you're charging this much, it needs to match. It's easy. This is very important also. The date of your invoice cannot precede the date of my contract. It makes sense if you think about it, but you would be amazed at how many invoices I get with a date that comes before the date of the contract. It doesn't work. I need a new one. And the last thing is it needs to be signed. We can get around that sometimes, but if we just tell everybody it needs to be signed, it just goes much smoother. Okay, go ahead. So then you return all those things to me, and here's where I submit the contract for board approval. Again, a purchase order doesn't need board approval, but an IEA and an SPC needs to go for board approval. And Sue mentioned Board of Education. This is the BOCES Board of Education. So it doesn't go to your school district. It is actually a BOCES Board of Education that needs to approve spending this money. And then, this is what we've all been waiting for, our program occurs. And again, you can see I don't have anything to do with this. This is between you and the school. And then the school knows to send me, go ahead, an okay to pay. And if they don't remember, I send them a reminder. And then I submit your paperwork for payment. We issue checks twice a month, once mid-month, once at the end of the month, and then we're done. You get paid. So I'm going to come over here, and you can see how simple this is, because you're going to schedule a program with the school. You're already going to do that anyway. You're probably going to have to fill out some forms. You're going to do that anyway. You're going to do your program. You're going to do that anyway. And you're going to get paid. So it doesn't really add any work to you, but the benefit to the school is they get the state aid back. And if you need me at any point during this process, I love to help.
Terrific.
Any questions?
So you have everything in your folder that you need. I'm going to try to go through this quickly. I think I only have 20 minutes. Never enough time for me. So I'm going to try to go through it quickly. I'm just going to really breeze through a little bit about the Common Core, and I know that's Julie's thing next. So I'm not really going to talk about the Common Core in depth because I'm done talking about the Common Core. But I'll talk a little bit about the shift of arts education shifts. I'll talk about that and what you can do to help us achieve our goals in the district. Okay? So I like to start off with this, and I think this does have to do with art teachers, but I think you will relate to this.
My favorite teachers were always the art teachers, you know? I always loved art teachers because they were so bizarre, right? They were like the homeless people of the faculty. Right? All disheveled, wearing smocks, covered in paint, always like digging through the garbage looking for bottles and egg cartons and things. All disorganized, always making announcements when you're on your way out the door already. Like, people, listen up. People, if any of your neighbors or relatives have any paper towel rolls, bringing them in. We're going to be making vases for Mother's Day. These people are free MacGyver for crying out loud. An egg cart becomes a bouquet of flowers. It always backfired on me because around Mother's Day, my mom would get all depressed and start yelling at us how we were selfish and only thought of ourselves. Which only made it worse because then you had to whip out the paper towel roller. You were saying? I believe this pasta necklace is yours too. I love you, Mom, and put on the ring to me.
Okay, so we can relate to that, right? That's the concept that people have of what some art teachers do. And then maybe at some point it's true, but we're really trying to change that. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to do that. I know it's good enough to watch again, but this is me when I was a kid and when I started loving art. And this is my art teacher, Miss Baird. You can see she has a flower in her hair, real hippie, taught me about the Beatles. In New York City, Washington Heights, that's where I was from, born. And at that time, art, and when I was learning about art as a child, it was about art for art's sake. You just kind of did it, felt it, came out of you, awesome, splots, beautiful. You know, there was no real connection to meaning. It was all about feeling whatever you wanted to do. Now that's art. I don't know about theater, dance, and music. I'm assuming it's very similar at that time, in that time, which is around the 1980s. But it was really art for art's sake. And though she tried to nurture that, there was no real direction, certainly no standards at that point. I went to school for art education. This was my job in Black Rock Academy in New York, in Buffalo, off Niagara Street, if you know anything about that area. At this point, when I went through art education and started teaching, we learned a little bit more about something called discipline-based art education. And there were 4 kind of factors that were involved in that. Mostly it was about art production. There was a little bit about art criticism, some art history, and aesthetics. So there were these 4 components, kind of like silos. And what the art education reformists at that time wanted to do was to make sure that when you talked about art and art education, those were the categories you had to put them in. Sometimes they integrated, sometimes they didn't, but that was the way it went at that time. Most of us during this era also didn't have curriculum. I know I didn't. So when I stepped in my classroom, I kind of pretty much made up what I thought was appropriate, figuring out what seemed right for the kids that I had. So there was a lot of figuring out and building of knowledge in art education, but there were people talking about it, which was good. Soon after, around 2000, when the national standards came through, they started talking about comprehensive art education reform, which is not too far from DBAE. But what they did was they talked about integrating those 4 categories a little bit better. So they were like silos that had cracks, so the grains kind of mixed. But there was no real talk about integration other than integration in the arts. So it was still pretty isolated from other content areas. So now today what we're trying to do is, through the Common Core, is changing that kind of mentality, saying the arts are just as important as what they call the core subjects. We all have equal standing, and we also need to integrate. ELA and math have to integrate into arts. Arts have to integrate the other way. And so there's this balance. And that's why the Common Core is in a really teeny tiny pea shell. Okay, I know Julie's going to go into that. I'm not going to talk too much more about that. But this is what the cover of the document looks like. It is like a Bible. It's about this thick. Wouldn't you say? It seems to grow, but it's about that thick. And that's what it looks like. It's non-threatening. But when you open it, it's a little scary. And there's all sorts of things in there. But it's really good stuff. You have to sit and you have to browse. Now, we've had this discussion in the Apple meetings. I personally don't think that a teaching artist needs to worry about this too much, but it's always good to have the knowledge. It really is the education programmers that really should have a better idea of what that is. But, see, this is what it's bad when I don't have my helper. Because I'm looking at that and I'm going to dance soon. Okay. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of what CCLS is. Very brief. When they created Common Core Learning Standards, CCLS, sorry, I have to put my back towards some of you. This is definitely a movement that's state-led. This is really important for you to understand, and it was hugely important for my teachers to understand. This is state-led. And there is actually a bigger national group that coordinated this, and you can see the names of those groups right there. But it is state-led. It's not district-led. It's huge, because this is something that will be enforced by the state. The state is saying we're accountable to follow these standards. It's not the district, it is the state. It's huge, it's a huge difference. Everyone in the state, every arts teacher has to follow these. It is aligned with college and career expectations. It's rigorous in content, always depth over breadth. The deeper you get into the content knowledge, the better. They don't want you to cover 8 million things. They want you to, which is where you guys fit in really well. Rigorous application of knowledge using higher order skills, huge. internationally benchmarked so as to keep to the global educational standards and competitive markets. That's also huge. And for our businesses. And a framework was developed based on evidence and research. So everything that you see here that I gave you is based on research. It's not something that kind of came off, I don't know, someone's dream the night before. Okay.
When was this instigated, what year?
Julie, what year did they start talking about?
I want to say this is like 2008, but I mean, the standards have been in development for a while. They were officially adopted, what, 2 years ago?
Yeah, it was about 2010.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's fine. 2010 is when we got the information to say, start thinking about this stuff, get it rolling. Yeah. So why do we need CCLS? Why do the arts people, arts education, arts and education people need CCLS? Well, it helps our students in several ways. Preparation. College and career-ready standards help prepare students to succeed after high school. I think, well, competition. International benchmarking ensures we are globally competitive. These little pointers are really huge because they really sell the point of CCLS and why it's so important. And it just doesn't sell it to educators or parents or students, but it sells it to the community at large, to businesses. This is why we need to follow this, because it's going to help all of us. Equity, this is my big one. Expectations are consistent for all and are not dependent on a student's zip code. So what's happening on the east side of Buffalo is happening in Williamsville, happening in Lackawanna, happening in New York City. It's all the same. Clarity, focus, coherence, and clarity help students, parents, and teachers understand what's expected of them. So now teachers, arts teachers are fun, you know, like the little video. You just kind of do, you did at the time, you just kind of created a curriculum that you thought. Now that's not the case. Now there are certain expectations that we need to follow, that we're accountable for in the classroom. And so are students. Students are accountable to meet those benchmarks, those standards, and all those anchor standards. And it keeps all our teachers, which is huge in Buffalo, because we have 80 art teachers, 85 music teachers, and 6 theater and dance teachers. I know, and my adopted children, those guys, right? But it keeps everyone on the same level. They understand the needs of all their students, and they're doing the same things to get there. They're not doing all, that doesn't mean there's not creativity in the curriculum. I don't want you to think that, but they're all focused on one path, and that's college and career readiness, to get these kids ready for college and career. And collaboration. States throughout the nation will pull resources together throughout the nation. So states throughout the nation are following this. So they'll pull the resources and expertise to create curricular tools, professional development, common assessments that we can all share. So in art education, which is also known as the technical subjects, it's not pretty. That's what they call us in the Common Core Learning Standards document. How will that affect us? Well, the standards are going to change. I'm going to show you a template for that in a minute. They're not going to be the standards that you know and love, the 4 that you've memorized. I know you all have. Okay, they're going to be different. Accountability measures are put in place at all levels, from top to bottom. Expectations are raised for students and teachers. Arts educators will be on the same page, talking the same language, walking the same walk, which is really huge for a district like our size. And levels the playing field between arts education and other disciplines. The shifts that I'll talk to you in a second apply to all, okay? So what are the shifts? How much time do I have?
Yeah, a little over 5 minutes.
All right, well, I'm going to go through this super fast. Instructional shifts, there's 6 in math, 6 in ELA, and I think there's 6 in math too. Just to let you know, our teachers are working on the shifts in literacy, and next year we'll be working on the shifts in math. We were supposed to be doing them at the same time. It was too much. Teachers freaked out. So we just take a little bit of time, just like what you do with your students. You figure out what their needs are, you meet them where they are, and work their way up. That's where we're at. So next year, all their lessons are going to be Common Core aligned. Right now, they only need 4 for the year. This next year, every lesson is going to be Common Core aligned, and they need to have these shifts involved. And the shifts are really like, I don't want to call them tenets, but they're like the meat, I don't know, how would you call that? The shifts. The shifts are like,
The shifts in instructional expectations, and
yeah, good. So it's like the meat of the Common Core. Like really, this gives you an overview of what the Common Core is trying to get at. So if you can follow, and what I would recommend, just as the supervisor of art education, who also deals with theater and dance for some reason, will use this. This, I think, will be helpful for you. Don't go crazy with the standards. Look at this. I think this will help. There are 6 of them. First one is pre-K through 5 focused. Second one is 6 through 12 focused. And the rest deal K through 12. Text, the only other thing I want to talk about with this, and I'll just let Julie talk about it later. Text also refers to not only the written word, but text also refers to paintings. You can read a painting, you can read music, you can read a script, you can see a performance and read that. That would be considered a text. So it's not just written word. You look confused. You have a question about that? No? Yeah, no question? Okay. That's exciting. That made teachers very happy, that it's not about writing and reading all the time. Text can be considered a painting. You can read a painting. That was huge. Math, there are 6 also. With the math, for those who may be interested, there's one here that talks specifically about the math classroom. I was told by New York State that we do not have to worry about that because it specifically talks about the math classroom. So we are not the math classroom, so we don't have to worry about that. And this is the template that's in there. I gave you a blank copy of it in your packet. This is what the template's going to look like. And in this big one that I gave you that I know you're going to read later because it's really good stuff. Page, I can't find a page. This page here, I don't see a page number. But you'll see over here the philosophical foundations and the lifelong goals. Again, I'm not going to go into that because I just don't have the time, and I would love to do this for you at another time if you'd like me to. But this is the chart that explains that. So there are lots of different layers to what the new standards are going to look like. And what's really exciting about these standards and about what this is looking like, it's going to focus on creating, presenting, performing, producing, responding, and connecting to other arts, including media arts. There was some conversation about maybe adding media arts as a separate, and I don't know where that is right now, to be honest with you. But, and they're also looking at benchmarking at certain grades to see if they're ready to move on to the next arts level. But here in this piece, they talk about the things that really should be established through the standards. And I love this, and Nancy, you're going to love this. They have a section called Art as a Means to Well-Being. So when we did yoga with art teachers, we weren't too far off. So I mean, they talk about wellness, which is really interesting. So read that. That's pretty cool. So what's the point? Did you like that? All right, what's the point? Okay. Well, arts education, arts partnerships can help with the states and districts and really the nation's mission. These are some of our own students with some of our teaching artists that you may or may not know in there. Jerry Mead, and I'm going to give you a little brief piece of how we like to work with our teaching artists, and this is through a grant that I'm running through Buffalo, working with music and art teachers. So this is the teacher, and you'll see this, the musician, the teaching artist, and how they work together. This is what I like to see. This is School 31, one of our tougher schools. Stu, you all know Stu? you'll notice what's important to me is that the teacher and the artist are working together. They've planned together, and they're working on the goals of the teacher, aligning it to the Common Core learning standards. They're working together. Sorry. Okay, so that is our grant, and we work with our teachers too, and teaching artists, visual artists, and we're trying to get into the dance and theater because they really do get left out in a lot of stuff. So I do that all the time. I apologize. Another good piece of news that I'd like to share with you is that we had a meeting, the MECOB, right? MECOB is SUCOB. I know, bad joke. Okay, so MECOB met. What does that stand for? I'm going to ask Nancy.
Museum Education Consortium of Buffalo. So it's museums in the city of Buffalo.
Right, and so
Their
we had
education departments.
So we had a meeting with them and the superintendent, and it was really the first time she stated very clearly that she certainly supports the arts, which I kind of knew that before, but that she wants to assign funding for the arts, for enrichment activities, for field trips. So it's probably not going to happen until next year, but this is something, and she wants principals to feel free to use these funds for these things, that they shouldn't just not feel that students should not leave their school, which for a couple of years that was the case. We were trapped in our schools. I mean, that's really what it was. So now it's really different. And I think we need to take advantage of that. That's it for me. I apologize if I went a little longer, but this is my information. I also have a card in there. Again, programs do go through me. Certainly all the art education programs. If you're interested in dance and theater, it goes through me. Music, there is a music supervisor, but if you'd like my advice, I'm willing to give that to you. And that's it. Thank you so much.